on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Listener discretion is advised. The show contains graphic language and depictions of violence. It may not be suitable for all audiences.
We say fuck a lot. Hey guys, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
What's up, Dylan?
Oh my God, we had some technical difficulties.
We had a rough go of it. It's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, I think that was the...
Maybe. I thought it was a sign from the universe that we needed to take the weekend off.
Yeah, we already missed a Mountain Murder, an offbeat because of me. My work schedule's been insane. And Heather couldn't wrangle me in here to get me to say stupid things while she says smart things. And I
love how you're so articulate.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really? Was I expressing myself in a very good manner right there?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I think that was a prime example of the kind of content you can get here at Mountain Murders. And then we just had all kinds of other stuff happen. We didn't think we were going to get to record.
Oh my gosh. It was like a fiasco. First, my Word document, it looked like it was mostly deleted.
After you've worked on it for like 6 hours today?
I was like freaking out. Then you couldn't get the mixer to function. And then you kept thinking it was like our ghost had messed with the mixer.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I think our ghost does mess with some things in the house, but I was like, I don't know if he's trying to sabotage the podcast.
He respects the podcast. He's never touched it. He's never touched our equipment. He hasn't touched mine.
Until today.
Has he touched your equipment?
Maybe.
Oh my God. I need to be home more.
He tries to touch my equipment. He's our ghost is a perv.
He does come in the bathroom with you only.
When I'm showering.
Yup.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, so what else? We're here. We made it, guys and gals.
Finally, dropping this episode a little later than we like to get out on Sunday evening. But hey, it's been a day. And yeah, Dylan, your work schedule has been intense. So we're lucky we are able to carve out any time to record this week.
Yes, we had to find a minute. You've worked on this story all day, I know, and yesterday. And
I've worked on it all week. I've just been spending the last 2 days typing.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. You've been working on it all week, and finally, and you have to top it all out. And I can never do any of that. And I'm just happy to be here. But we do have some true crime news that dropped a couple of days ago. It's pretty serious. I almost don't talk about this woman and man anymore because they disgust me so much. But yes, it's the case that keeps giving, the Lori Vallow saga.
Jeez.
And Chad freaking Daybell.
This case is like never-ending drama.
So the only reason I'm bringing it up anymore, because I've kind of vowed to myself not to even talk of
You don't want to talk about Lori anymore?
No, Lori.
Why not?
No, because you killed your children.
They were zombies.
And your husband.
He was a zombie.
And then probably your brother after he killed your husband for you.
He was a zombie too.
Everybody's zombies.
Everybody's a zombie.
Well, you know what, Lori? I think you're, unlike the court or unlike the so-called expert the defense has cited, I think you're competent to stand for trial.
But I believe in zombies. Clearly, I'm not competent.
But you were competent enough to cover up the crime, cover up multiple conspiracies for murder, and hide the bodies of your children.
Hush your mouth.
And leave the state.
You're a zombie.
Oh, God. So now I'm next.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not threatening you or anything.
Okay, Lori.
Zombie.
God, see, no, she really believed this shit. But me and Heather were discussing.
Cuckoo.
So the defense is trying to say she's not competent to move forward with the trial at the moment. And me and Heather discussed this. Shit.
She was competent enough to hide her crimes. And that's what she clearly knew right from wrong because she knew she needed to cover up what she had done. So therefore, I don't think she's incompetent mentally. I think she's very aware of what she did. She knew it was wrong. She wasn't trying to get caught. She was on the run. She hid the bodies. So I'm like, that bitch is fucking guilty. Throw her ass in a damn pit of snakes.
Yeah, even though she believes all this crazy shit, she knew what she was doing.
No, she totally did.
She knew what was wrong, what was right or wrong at the time of these crimes, and so I think she's definitely competent.
I hope they fry her. And I'm not always a big fan of the death penalty, but in this case, I feel like this bitch deserves it. And so does her stupid husband and his dumb face.
Jesus Christ.
He's got a dumb face.
And so Lori possibly is going to face charges connected to the death of her husband. And Chad Daybell as well is possibly going to face charges connected to the death of his ex-wife, or his wife at the time, which both happened in a matter of months of each other. And, I mean, come on. But I am glad all this, after hearing this crazy story for so long and it had so many parts to it, it seems like they're finally getting it all together as far as the Maricopa County goes with the charges.
Well, it's about time.
It is about time. But they just want to make sure it's right, maybe. You know, the wheels of justice, they churn slowly.
Oh, yeah. If they churn at all.
Oh, my God. Oh,
Unless they get a flat tire or something.
I get so pissed off when I talk. How do you kill your own kids?
That's a special kind of
and just throw them out like trash.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all.
Jesus. Do you have anything for us besides an incredible story forthcoming?
No, I'm ready to move into our case today.
You do have a lot of ground to cover. You did mention like 20 pages to get through, so let's do it.
Actually, it's more than 20 pages, Dylan, but...
Oh, my God. See, I don't even know your process.
Are you ready?
You're pointing out what little I actually do bring to the podcast, and oh, my God, I'm ready. Yes, ma'am.
Don't cry.
I'm not going to cry.
Not yet.
I'm going to say dumb shit periodically.
You can cry afterwards.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Let's get into this case. So, as we've learned in our study of true crime, many serial killers throughout history have seemed completely normal. To the outside world, these men and women were just as average as can be, often working common jobs, attending church, raising families, and even participating in the community.
Yeah, it's so weird to me that these people can be such monsters, but just kind of hide in plain sight.
A quick glance at their lives show nothing out of the ordinary. But if you take a deeper look into their lives, you will often see a dark, sinister person lurking under a mask of normality. Today we're going to be talking about William Darrell Armstrong, who was born March 18th, 1935 in Palatka, Florida, to parents William and Mabel. William Sr. was a roofer, and his wife Mabel was a stay-at-home mother with their newborn baby. 5 months after their son was born, William Sr. careened his car off the road, crashed, killed himself and his wife.
Oh, my God.
So baby William was left orphaned. There has been some speculation about the accident. Some people believe it was a murder-suicide and that William planned to take out the entire family.
Oh, and the baby just happened to live.
Baby just happened to live, which is strange considering the 30s. You know that baby wasn't in any kind of safety seat.
No, I don't know how the baby might or might not have been restrained, but they do say that in automobile accidents, because, even if you got your seatbelt on, you're still sore and, all jammed up, that babies don't react. Because they're kind of just, they're babies. They're not thinking about, right? They're not thinking about, I'm driving down the road.
Well, they're so flexible, too. I mean, the baby can, put its little leg behind its head and, put its toes in its mouth and,
Yeah, so they don't tense up or any of that.
Well, baby William was adopted by a couple, Cecil and Oline Lindsey, who had recently lost their infant son. So William Darrell Lindsey would become known as Billy, and he moved to St. Augustine with his new family. The Lindseys had 3 other children in the home. Oline was described as a pious woman who firmly believed in the fire and brimstone teachings of the Old Testament.
Ooh, we got a couple of those awesome churches around here.
She was incredibly religious and kind of the old school hellfire, everyone's a sinner, God's going to cut you down. So
you got the King James is a newer version, kind of a little bit more lighthearted version. And then she's the Old Testament. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, she just was very much into that whole fire and brimstone. I think the New Testament is more about, love and compassion and understanding. And the Old Testament's like, you're all sinners. God's going to come fuck you all up.
Old Testament, God's scary, man.
Like lasers and fire beams and stuff.
Yeah, he's like, you do this or I'm just going to kill everybody. And you'll be like, okay, God, I'll do that. Don't kill everybody.
So she kind of had that mentality of
Okay.
like, everything you do, you're a sinner, you're going to get punished. One of those religious fanatics. And like I say, some might describe her as a religious fanatic. Neighbors would later say that Oline was the meanest woman alive.
Wow.
I hope to one day earn that title.
I think you are in the running, like you're building up to that, you know? It's like you've been in training all your life to just be a scary, mean old woman.
Yes. You think I'm getting there?
Well, I think you definitely have the aptitude to be there one day.
I aspire. Cecil took a back seat when it came to child rearing. Oline was in charge. She was extremely strict and often enforced rules with physical punishments. Beatings were not uncommon in the household, often with frying pans and leather straps.
Yeah, that's not a whooping. That's getting beat up.
That's a beating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a little much.
The children would have their hair pulled and get pinched by Oline. Can you imagine, like, a grown woman pinching little kids as their punishment? That's
there's
so strange to me.
Something about a pinch, it really hurts.
It does.
Like, even in jest or someone kidding around, I can only imagine with, like, a malicious pinch. That would hurt like hell.
Well, I'm just picturing Oline, and I have no idea what she looks like, but just this mean old woman, right, going around, like, pinching small children.
Yeah.
Like she's the witch from the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or something.
Just walk up and grabbing, like, your neck fat right there, or your neck skin where it goes to your shoulder and just pinching the shit out of it.
Or the inside of your arm, like, on the opposite side of your elbow, and that little fold, that little piece of fat skin.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Are you going to pinch me later?
Yeah, I might have to try that. So, will it keep you in line?
I'm not out of line.
There's nothing to get you in line, that's for sure. Now, according to reports, Billy was the male Cinderella of the household, often subjected to the brunt of abuse. Billy, in turn, became a loner. He had few friends, mostly choosing to spend time alone. He was a poor student, often earning C's. Billy's struggles academically ensured that he would be held back several years in school, and due to this, he was targeted by neighborhood bullies. In retaliation, Billy set fire to a hut the boys had built, burning it to the ground.
Well, I think that's a good sign that maybe you should leave this kid the hell alone, right? When he commits arson on your property, because what's next?
He tortured animals, specifically cats, and by 21, Billy had not completed high school yet, so he dropped out in 1956 from Ketterlinus High School. And it was also at age 21 that Billy learned he had been adopted and the truth of his parents' automobile accident.
Oh, so that's another... I'd say that's hard for a kid to learn about... Not only these aren't your real parents, even if they're good to you, which it sounds like she was mean as hell. And not only that, but your other parents have died, you never knew them. And there's so many questions.
Then he received an inheritance. I believe it was like $25,000 from his birth parents. And Oline demanded that he give her the money to pay her back for taking care of him all those years.
Oh, wow. And you're talking, what, mid-30s? Or, no, he's grown now. What is this?
This would be the 50s, Dylan.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and he blew through that money pretty quickly.
God damn it.
But can you imagine your adoptive mother saying, you have to pay me back because I took care of you?
Yeah, I didn't ask you to adopt me.
Right? Okay. Well, Billy bounced around from job to job, spending some time working first at Pulling Typewriter Company and at other like menial types of jobs. He did a small stint in the National Guard, but he just had a really hard time maintaining employment.
Yeah, we're seeing it's a checklist, serial killer checklist. He's got antisocial behaviors. I won't always bring this up. He's got a very overbearing woman in his life that's mean to him. Feels kind of pushed out and alone. Yeah. Tortures animals.
Why do you look at me when you say there's an overbearing woman in his life? Why are you giving me that eye?
I do not feel that way about you.
Why are you staring at me like that?
Well, it's because you're directly across from me, and we usually do that when we talk.
I don't like that eye you're giving me, Dylan.
You want me to look at the
I'll
wall?
wipe that face off your head.
And he's torturing animals. Poor kitties.
Arson.
Oh, shit. I'm just waiting for him to piss the bed.
Poor student.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe he was a bedwetter. I don't know. I didn't find that information, but it wouldn't surprise me, right? Then Billy met a blonde named Willa Jean at a bar called the Sip and Nip.
Whoa.
I had to include the name of the bar, Dylan, because I felt like the Sip and Nip is a place that you would want to hang out.
Yeah, because I got to do my other restaurant / vintage chair business I want to start called the Sit and Shit.
Oh, God.
And I could have, you knew it. And I'm going to have an adjoining door between the businesses, and you just go back and forth.
At the Sip and Nip?
And the Sip and Nip, and then you can go over to the Sit and Shit.
I think the Sip and Nip could also be a great name for like a strip club. Get it? Like you can have a sip and see a nip. The Sip and Nip.
I like that.
Yeah.
It'll still never be better than Southern Exposure.
Someone fund my business idea. Okay, so Willa Jean was a hard drinker who liked the nightlife. She wanted to boogie.
Okay.
She was a party gal.
Dude, wow, that's the exact song that played in my head
She was
when
the
you said that.
honky-tonk queen. Many would say his relationship with Willa Jean set Billy down a dangerous path. So the couple married on February the 15th, 1958, and soon had their first child together. After daughter Beverly was born, the couple had 4 more children: Tina Marie, Robin, Cecil, and Billy. The marriage was a hot mess.
Well, that doesn't surprise me for some reason.
Willa Jean reportedly drank heavily, and the couple would separate, then reconcile. It was one of those break up, make up, on and off, on and off.
You know, the kids get tired of that. Everybody gets tired of that couple that does that.
It's so messy.
The family, the friends, and then they come in when they're in the breakup phase. They're so mad at each other, and they tell all the dirt and bad things to do it. And eventually you get tired of even listening because you know, like 2 days later they're going to be back together.
Yeah, just shut the fuck up already, right? Well, often Willa Jean would pack her belongings, leaving the children behind. And when one of the kids would beg her, like, please take me, Mommy, Willa Jean would say, I don't love you anymore, and leave. So she was not a kind woman. Willa Jean would often mock William's sexual performance as he struggled with erectile dysfunction. Infidelity was rampant in the marriage, as Willa Jean would often hook up with men she met at the bar.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that having ED around Willa Jean is not going. You're not going to get any understanding, or maybe we can work through this. She's just going to point and laugh.
Yeah. Well, in the 1960s, William began using heroin for a period. Now, he claimed he only used the drug for about 6 months, but on and off throughout his life, he would dabble in drugs or dabble with drugs. He changed jobs frequently due to poor work habits. He had bad credit and was seemingly always broke. Frequent periods of unemployment made it very difficult to raise their growing family. And though the Lindsey household struggled to make ends meet, William was impulsive with money. He would show up with a brand new car even though the family could barely pay their rent or keep food on the table. William did seasonal farm work, construction, and even worked at a paper mill.
Nice.
I knew I had to add that in there, Dylan.
Yeah, but so you're struggling to make it, and then you show up with like just blowing money on stuff. That's really ridiculous.
Yeah, but I think it goes to show the impulse, like he doesn't have a lot of impulse control.
Right.
Or makes like really snap decisions without really thinking about it. In 1970, William moved his family to Tennessee, where he took a job at a steel mill. But the home life did not improve. Daughter Robin appeared on the Discovery show Evil Lives Here, which, by the way, is a very interesting episode if you want to check that out. She described her childhood as tenuous at best. And though her parents fought incessantly, Robin saw her dad as the hero. He was the parent who tried to keep the family together. When Willa Jean left, William was the one who watched the kids and often tried to protect them from their mother's erratic behavior. Willa Jean would wake the kids in the early morning hours after a fight with her husband, telling the kids, like, pack your bags, we're leaving. And William would not let her take the kids. If she was drunk, if she was in some sort of state, violent state, he would be like, no, you can't take our kids. So they saw him as a protector.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure that seemed that way from their perspective. And I mean, it sounded like he was trying as best he could.
At some point, Willa Jean did take the kids from William and kept them for a couple of months, and he attempted suicide in 1974. He wrote a 7-page long suicide note. Willa Jean had him involuntarily committed for 2 weeks. Now, soon after, William was driving his daughter Beverly to a concert, and he had all 5 children in the car, when suddenly he veered off the road and hit an artificial boulder.
Wow. That's an odd thing to hit.
There were no serious injuries. However, Willa Jean told law enforcement that she believed her husband had attempted a murder-suicide with the children, just as his father had done back in 1935. The couple divorced in July of 1975 after 17 years of marriage. William was given custody of the 5 children due to Willa Jean's mental state. He soon married a woman named Annie Laurie Langley, and she happened to be from Waynesville, North Carolina, Dylan.
Wow.
A small world, huh? She had 2 sons. The large family would live a nomadic lifestyle, traveling between Asheville, North Carolina, Lynchburg, Virginia, and Florida. They were hard-pressed for money as William continued to have irregular employment. But one thing that did seem to change with his marriage to Annie Laurie was Bill's temper. He became physically and verbally abusive towards his wife.
I wonder what made him be different.
At one point, Annie Laurie's sister came to live with the couple in the early 1980s, and she often witnessed Bill's terrible treatment of his wife. Bill continued to have sexual problems and was said to have forced his wife to participate in a swingers group. Bill was also having sex with prostitutes.
So, yeah, I wonder if we've heard that before, ED, with some of these monsters. I wonder if it's just he hadn't figured out what his kink is, what really sexually excites him.
On October 14th of 1983, 24-year-old Lisa Foley, a barmaid at the Speakeasy Lounge, which was a Jacksonville strip club, was drinking with her boyfriend at the Trade Winds Lounge. Foley was a single mother who had a 4-year-old daughter at home. Now, Lisa was known to drink heavily and use cocaine. Her boyfriend left the Trade Winds Lounge, but Lisa wanted to stay and party, so he last saw her around 9 p.m. that night. She was not seen again until her body was found 5 days later in a burrow pit. Lisa had been badly beaten about the face and died from asphyxiation. Her case would go unsolved for more than a decade. On November 29th of 1988, Anita McCaig Stevens stood at the intersection of King Street and Riviera in West St. Augustine. Now, at the time, this area was called Crackhead Corner due to the drug and sex trade that took place there.
I hate that the drugs are, destroying that area there, but that's a great nickname for a corner.
Is it?
Don't you think so?
Kind of, but then I guess I could see where that might be a little bit insulting to people. I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about the crackheads who prefer to be called crack and hellers?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm going to call it. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I've seen a lot of rants on the internet where people say the term crackhead is racist.
Okay. So, well, a lot of white people flood these areas to buy their drugs, which only leads to more violence in these areas, right? Because the white people come there to get the drugs.
Well, I know. I'm not trying to start a fight. I'm just saying. Maybe the term crackhead corner is offensive to some people. I don't know. But anyway, this area was called Crackhead Corner. And it was rarely difficult to find a John who wasn't willing to pay cash or trade rocks for sex. You know all about that, don't you, Dylan?
Well, I've read stories.
Trading rocks for sex.
I've never traded. Don't say that. People might believe you.
I know. That was the whole point.
I'm just trading my paycheck to you for sex.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Getting real.
I don't want people to believe that.
That's a damn truth.
Anita was an addict. When a middle-aged man in a blue sedan pulled up, they agreed on $40 for a quote-unquote straight up.
Okay.
Do you know what a straight up is?
I'm going to assume that's just regular sex.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe if you can lay down, missionary.
I'm just curious because remember when we discussed Tammy Faye Baker and Jim Baker? Jim would often get, what was it, the French twist or something? And we couldn't figure out what exactly that was.
No, we had a couple of good ideas what the French twist would be from some patrons and some listeners, but we never nailed that down.
Yeah, so I don't know what a straight up is or a French twist.
Or a half and half.
A French
You know what that is, right?
No, I don't know what that is either.
Well, that would be oral then sex.
Oh, a half and half. So they agree on this straight up, and she suggested that he drive to a secluded area known as Fish Island. And this is an area covered in palmettos, wax myrtles, sawgrass. It was also like a dumping ground for debris. So it's just a really secluded, private type of area.
Yeah, I think every community, no matter the land type, has an area like that.
The pair should have plenty of privacy. So when the sexual encounter escalated into violence, the man began punching her in the face. She tried to run, but got caught in the thick fronds and dense undergrowth. The man caught up to her, and he picked up a 1x6 board that was lying in a nearby debris pile. When he got to Anita, he began raining down brutal blows with the board. When she was on the ground, he was kicking her face and body. Anita's eye socket was crushed, her jawbone splintered. When she was no longer moving, the man dragged her body toward the pond. He tried removing her clothing, and when that didn't quite work, he took out a knife and slit her pants, up the front. He took off her shirt and bra. He burned her thighs with a cigarette before raping her. Afterwards, and this is where things get really brutal, he shoved a tree branch into her vagina and anus. With the limbs protruding out, he dumped her into a swampy pond.
Damn. To brutally assault someone, I thought he was, not that it's okay, good, but he killed her. But he beats the living hell out of her, horribly, brutally, then rapes her. And then, he's torturing her. I don't know how you still be in the mood for sex. I don't get it.
Because he's someone who obviously is excited by violence. He's a sexual sadist. Well, the man was known to area prostitutes as Bill, and he was a frequent customer. Bill
the beater, and I'm sure they had stories about him being, getting a little violent or being mean to them, And there's typically, if they do frequent the same prostitutes in the area, someone like this, people say, oh, I don't want to go with him anymore, or things like that,
Well, that's what's really interesting about Bill, as we will learn over the course of our story, is that he seemed to have two sides.
Oh, like Jekyll and Hyde?
Yeah. There was a side of Bill that was frequenting the same sex workers, treated them very well, gave them money, would provide them with a place to stay at times. And then there was this really evil version of Bill.
Oh, okay. So some might be like, oh, I've never had a problem out of him. He's nice to me.
So we'll get into more of that here in a minute. But thanks for ruining my story.
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
I prefaced it.
On November 30th of 1988, an employee with the Mosquito Control District, which I find it interesting that that's even a job.
Well, why? Because we get carried off on our front porch in the mountains.
I know. I was just thinking, can I have a mosquito control district person here? Because they eat me alive.
Could you imagine in a swampy, tropical area?
Oh, I've been eaten alive in a swamp. It's bad. So this employee is collecting water samples when he catches a glimpse of what he thought was a mannequin floating in this pond. Realizing it was a woman's body, the volunteer fireman called for help. And because he did have experience as a volunteer fireman, he was able to secure the area and wait for law enforcement. Investigators didn't have much physical evidence at the scene. There were some tire tracks, but because this area was known as a dumping ground, those tracks were likely going to be useless. When the unidentified woman was taken in for an autopsy, the medical examiner determined that she had hemorrhages to the larynx and hyoid, was beaten badly, she had scratches, bite marks on her body, she had anal tears and vaginal perforations. They found old birdshot pellets embedded in the back right side of her head, which was kind of an odd thing to find.
Yeah.
Because
you're saying from a previous injury.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of baffled them a little bit. It was on December the 1st that the St. Augustine Record ran a drawing with descriptions of this Jane Doe. And that's when a man named Jonathan Trimble called police to say he thought it was his former girlfriend, Anita Stevens. Now, baffled by this murder, investigators turned over the information to VICAP, which is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program at the FBI. Now, some among law enforcement thought her murder could have been a John or a pimp, but others felt that the violent nature of her murder was something far more sinister.
Well, and I'm sure they could be right?
Yeah, some of the detectives were like, yeah, if it had just been her pimp or a John, they may have just shot her, strangled her. But the fact that it was such a brutal crime and that he had desecrated her body afterwards.
Yeah.
It was this doesn't seem like a normal killing over money or dispute about a sexual favor or something like that.
Yeah, it's like killing for killing's sake. They keep on because it's not just about killing her. It's about getting your rocks off or whatever because you're getting off on the pure violence.
Well, we've talked about VICAP before, especially during the Samuel Little case on that episode. And so the thing with VICAP is if you have a particularly violent or horrific type of crime, you would submit all of the details to VICAP, and it's a database so that they can go back and pull other murders across the country that might match those particular like descriptions, and they might be able to make a pattern of like this could be a serial killer or that type of thing. Oh,
so like MO, the area it happens, all these different details can be connected to other cases if there's some kind of a pattern.
Yeah, I mean, I so eloquently described that, but that's basically the gist of VICAP, is that it's a way for them to trace murders, make connections, and, possibly narrow down suspects later on, that type of thing. Well, let's take a moment, Dylan, to discuss St. Augustine. Have you ever been to St. Augustine, Florida?
Yeah, I have. It's beautiful.
I've never been.
It's beautiful. One time when I was rather young, went to like spring break or something in Daytona. We hit St. Augustine and Cocoa Beach on the way. And it's a lovely town and lots of history.
Isn't St. Augustine considered like the oldest city in the United States?
I believe so. A lot of Spanish influence in the architecture and stuff, and old forts and lots of history, and it's beautiful.
Well, St. Augustine is a sun-soaked city known as a tourist destination. It attracts honeymooners who want to seek a beach haven on the northeast Florida coast. It's rich in history. Over 3 million tourists visit the city each year. But like with most cities, especially those tourism-based economies, there's a seedy underbelly. So hidden from the view of the Castillo Lighthouse and other popular destinations is the area with dilapidated homes, pawn shops, bars, bail bondsmen, littered parking lots, and down by King Street near the Pick and Save supermarket, plenty of sex workers and drugs for sale. And this is the area known as Crackhead Corner.
Wow, they hang out at the Pick and Save?
The Pick and Save.
That's awesome.
It was a very popular spot for sex workers.
You pick it, you can have it. And save money.
Crack cocaine was the drug of choice during the 1980s. Now, in this area of King Street, as we mentioned, Crackhead Corner, it was overrun with pimps, sex workers, drug dealers, and Johns cruising. At night, the pushers and the sex workers approached cars openly. Johns would drive the sex workers to secluded hideaways nearby, many near burrow pits and water-filled ponds.
Oh, well, that's not... I guess that's convenient for a killer to get rid of a body.
Well, that's the thing. It presented a real danger to sex workers.
So that
because these were definitely areas where someone could get rid of a body.
So the typical spots they used were secluded and dangerous.
And I called it a burrow pit. It's a borrow pit. I'm sorry, I'm country.
A borrow?
A borrow pit. But they sound like they're just these big sort of ponds or like these water-filled types of ponds.
Okay.
That are just kind of all over the place.
Sounds like maybe it has something to do with drainage or something?
Possibly.
All right. We won't spend too much time trying to figure that out.
No, I live in the mountains. I don't know what a borrow pit is, but
it's a place you could throw a body if you are a maniac and you kill someone.
Yeah. So like many of the women on the corner, Anita Stevens' crack cocaine addiction drove her to sex work. She had a $100 to $200 a day habit. Now, often these addicts had no education, they had children tethered to them, and often no support system. So this was like an ideal hunting ground for a serial killer. A melange of people shopped King Street, from affluent bankers to day laborers, and business was booming. 27-year-old Anita came from a well-respected St. Augustine family. Mildred and Melvin McQuaig had a close-knit family. They had a life full of promise and children who went on to be successful in their careers and families. Melvin was a retired Army reservist who served during World War II. Anita was born April 13th, 1961, but she only was born with one kidney, so she kind of had a childhood plagued by illness.
Oh, it's sad.
Because of this. She was a very beautiful, blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl, always attracted attention because she was so pretty. By 13, she began exhibiting a lot of rebelliousness, which was a shock to her parents because they hadn't experienced those problems with their other children. She ran away with a friend when she was 13 and ended up 700 miles away in Pennsylvania. Her parents had to fly up north to bring her back home.
Really?
So by the mid-70s, drugs were pretty much everywhere. And Anita, like a lot of teenagers at the time, began experimenting first with marijuana. And then, of course, that is like a gateway to other things. So by 16, she was pregnant with an older man's child. She ended up marrying this guy named Frank DeBose, who was a boatyard worker. And together they had a son named Dustin. This marriage was not good. They abused drugs and alcohol. Frank was physically violent at times. So after a while, Anita took her young son back to her parents' house. She was working as a waitress, but soon kind of got mixed up in more drugs, was introduced to crack.
Yeah, and what, 80s? You're talking when the epidemic was really taking off?
And they say crack is whack?
Well, and there also was a thing, the earliest version of crack, freebasing, and if I'm not mistaken, that featured in movies like New Jack City, things like that. It's even more addictive and intense than crack. So it's really just grabbing a hold of people in just a scary way. I think you might remember in the later state of Me Too, the age we were, of just how scary the crack epidemic was, even though it was being fueled by the CIA and the government. That aside, it was just destroying entire communities. And I had to look it up because my brain works that way. A borrow pit is actually a mounded up like pond, and typically next to roads and ditches. And the reason it's called borrow is because it's mounded up above the ground, and then it's full of water as if the dirt was borrowed from somewhere else.
Thank you, Dylan.
I'm sorry, my brain, I couldn't get past that, and I couldn't even concentrate on what you were saying until I looked at that. I'm sorry.
Anita's parents had paid for rehab several times, but it would never stick for very long. She had minor brushes with the law, and then in 1985, she moved to Cape Canaveral, hoping to turn her life around. She left her young son Dustin with her parents, and this is when she met a Navy enlistee named Park Stevens. When Anita became pregnant, the two married. Now, her son Park Jr. was born, but a baby did little to salvage this marriage. It was plagued also by drug and alcohol abuse. Park was abusive to her older son, Dustin, and Anita succumbed to crack addiction once again. Park was ordered into rehab by the Navy, and because he was more of a drinker than like a drug user. But when he was released from this rehab program, he immediately divorced Anita in 1986.
Well, he realized as having an addiction problem of his own that he had to get away from another addict if he was ever going to get better. And that's a problem with drug addiction. What's so bad about it is it causes all these other issues in a relationship. Financial stresses, communication issues. And you're just not going to make it, especially when two addicts are together.
She moved back to St. Augustine, but her behavior grew more erratic as the addiction took control. Now, sometimes she'd be a very caring and loving mother, but at other times, she was neglectful or just downright abusive to her children. In August of 1986, Anita was kidnapped and gang raped.
Well, that's horrible.
She filed a police report and went to the emergency room for treatment. Now, eventually, Anita lost custody of both children. Her parents were awarded guardianship. On the streets, other sex workers and dealers called Anita and this is a quote, rip-off whore.
Oh.
Because she had a reputation for robbing Johns. She owed a lot of money to drug dealers. Before her death in 1988, she was staying at her parents' camper in Flagler Beach. So on the day she went missing, she had attended a custody meeting at the McQuaig household. Her parents, they had this custody meeting at her parents' house. There was a guardian ad litem from court that had been appointed to come in, observe and kind of be an advocate for the children. The guardian ad litem noted that, Anita clearly had a drug addiction and her unpredictable behavior was something else. even at this meeting. So the guardian ad litem said that the children would be best left in their grandparents' custody. Now, Anita flips out when she hears this news.
Well, yeah, and I think the advocate is right. I mean, if you're that unstable and you can't even get your shit together and try to at least act normal for an hour-long meeting with someone and something that important, then yeah, you're not going to be able to take care of those kids.
Well, she flips out. She storms out of the house angry. And this was the last time that Anita's family would see her alive. So after the stress of this meeting, the McQuaigs thought it would be best to go out of town for a couple of days to a cabin that they owned. So when her family returns from their little mini vacation, her mother saw the Jane Doe sketch in the newspaper, and she knew it was her daughter, Anita.
How sad is that? They're having these issues with her, and I'm sure they just want her to get better, but still it's almost like they're at odds and like they're against each other in a way over the children, and have that big argument, and that last moment you see her and then you never see her again.
Well, I thought it was important to tell the stories of these sex workers, Dylan, because I think oftentimes in our society, we view sex workers as less important or less human, or that they're just like trash. And it's the same way that these serial killers view them. They're disposable, they're discarded, they can just be dumped and nobody will care. But these sex workers have families and people who care about them. They have children, they're often mothers. And like in Anita's case, many of the women we'll be talking about on this episode came from good families. They just happened to fall into drugs.
Yeah, and that's something that they're all going to have. A lot of sex workers are going to have in common. I'm not saying every sex worker is on drugs, but I would think that a large percentage are. Some people may be trying to make fast money, pay for that law school degree or whatever. I'm sure that happens. But I say the drugs is a driving force of this type of thing.
I think stereotypically people assume that sex workers probably came from broken homes and had terrible childhoods, but that's not always the case. I think it just speaks to the power of drug addiction, and that these drugs can take over your life and, ruin your life, and that you can turn to sex work to make that money to feed this addiction and find yourself in a really dangerous situation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So it was June 11th of 1989 that Robert Sykes and his wife were fishing at a borrow pit on Holmes Boulevard around 7:50 a.m. They loaded their boat into the water, and about 3 minutes later, Sykes spotted a female body half submerged in the water. She was lying on her back wearing only a red t-shirt. So it sounds almost like her legs were kind of partially in the water, but the top half of her body was still kind of on this embankment.
Okay, like on the edge of it.
She was lying on her back, as I said. Sykes phoned the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office quickly. When investigators arrived, they found a yellow nylon rope around the woman's neck. They were able to collect some tire prints, a couple of beer cans, and a pair of white socks at the scene. An autopsy revealed the victim had been dead between 16 to 18 hours, so not very long. There was cocaine in her toxicology report, and she had died from a gunshot wound to the head. She had also been strangled. She had a hemorrhaged larynx, and it was obvious that the nylon had been used, as like a ligature. She had the marks around her neck, all that. 28-year-old petite brunette sex worker Constance, or Connie Terrell, was a King Street regular. So like Anita, she grew up in St. Augustine. She was a middle child of 7. A lot of kids.
Wow.
Yeah, her parents raised Connie in a very loving Catholic home. The Terrells were people who nurtured music and art interests, and Connie was a talented artist growing up. At 12, she was diagnosed with scoliosis and had to wear a back brace to school, which led to a lot of teasing. And because of this, Connie developed very low self-esteem. By 11th grade, Connie was using drugs regularly and became pregnant. She married a guy named Billy Terrell, who was a framer, like a builder in construction, but he was also a very heavy drug user. Her daughter, Kimberly, was born in 1981, and then in 1983, she had a son named Jackie. But being a mother didn't curb Connie's appetite for drugs. Her husband, Billy, introduced her to crack cocaine in the very early 80s, and after that, well, you just couldn't tell her anything. She loved the crack.
I always find it surprising when I've heard this in the different true crimes I've listened to lately, where they find the beer cans or bottles and multiple cigarettes, like someone stood in one place. And you got to have a certain comfort level and just be mean as hell to do something like this to someone and then, while you're just kind of hanging out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, hey, I'm going to have a hot dog and a beer while I stand here over your dead body.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And then be dumb enough that, investigators think it's a treasure trove of, DNA and things like that. But, I mean, just to have that comfort and still that calmness to still have your beer and smoke a couple of, 2 or 3 cigarettes. That blows me away.
Well, eventually Billy and Connie split up because he was very physically abusive. So she found herself single, divorced, and she had no job, plus this raging drug addiction. So Connie prioritized crack above all else. Her kids spent time with their dad on and off, and sometimes with Connie's parents. But like a lot of addicts, Connie turned to sex work to pay for her drugs. But Connie stood out among the other sex workers, and they would later say that they hated her for it because Connie was like really beautiful.
Oh, so she's, when you think street prostitute strung out on drugs, she maybe is not what you would picture in your mind.
No, like she was very pretty. She was this tiny, petite little thing, beautiful dark hair, gorgeous face. I mean, she looked like a model. And all the other sex workers on King Street were like, we hated her.
Well, yeah.
Because she was pretty. Fuck her.
Yeah, and I'm sure the guys are like, oh, yeah, there she is, picking her over them kind of thing.
Yeah. And she didn't have to dress the part when working the street because she was so pretty. She just naturally attracted attention. So like where some of the other sex workers might kind of go out in that stereotypical like fishnets and leather mini skirt, bustier, whatever, Connie would just be out on the street in like jeans and a t-shirt because she just attracted a lot of business wherever she went. She was so pretty. But life was hard. She endured rapes and beatings from Johns. She stayed on and off with different men, some of them Johns. She just kind of stayed wherever she could, a couple of days, a week. Crash here, crash there. She served jail time for prostitution and shoplifting. So on June the 10th, 1989, Connie had been drinking all day with friends. And it was around 8 p.m. that she needed a fix. She needed some drugs. So she headed over to King Street. And shortly after, a man pulled up in a Ford LTD. The pair haggled over price, $30. Once inside the car, Connie directed him to a secluded spot near a burrow pit. Why do I keep calling it that? A borrow pit off of Holmes Boulevard. It was there that the couple climbed into the back seat and Connie began undressing. So after a few minutes, the man failed to get an erection. So Connie started laughing at him.
Oh, gosh, Connie, no, don't do it.
The man exploded, punching her with fists. He then grabbed a rope, placing it around her neck, and climbed out of the car, dragging the woman out of the vehicle with the rope. When she tried crawling away, he pulled a rifle from the car and shot her in the head.
Damn, so that's his move. Throw that kind of noose top thing around their neck and just manhandle them, I guess, right?
It was after Connie's murder that Bill moved with his family back to Palatka, Florida from St. Augustine. Soon, his wife, Annie Laurie, would fall ill and be diagnosed with colon cancer. And Bill's behavior became noticeably stranger to his family. He was using his wife's pain pills and began having an affair with a family friend named Sandra Sullivan. His treatment of Annie Laurie did not improve. As she was dying, Bill refused to allow her family, including her sister, to visit.
Damn, Bill.
So kept his wife from her family as she's dying.
What an asshole.
In 1992, Annie Laurie lost her battle with cancer. On Evil Lives Here, Bill's daughter Robin recalled a really strange visit from her dad. So this is after his wife died. He came to her house and brought her children a blonde wig. And she described it as like a blonde Dolly Parton type of wig.
I think while I was at work, you had told me this one, detail, and I was just like, that's so strange. I can't imagine what normal reason you would do this.
Well, Bill told his daughter that he had been shopping at the mall and thought the kids would get a kick out of this wig. But Robin thought it was a really weird gift for kids. She said her father's behavior became more odd after his wife's death. He began moving around. He would kind of live that nomadic lifestyle once again, where he was in Florida and then he would be back in Asheville and then he was just constantly kind of on the move. But the wig story, the daughter thought was very odd. And then later, when he's arrested, it really clicked that wig could have perhaps belonged to a sex worker.
I think it's likely. I think it's likely to have belonged to one of his victims. Don't you?
I mean, I was a little kid that would have loved if someone had bought me a wig, especially if it had been like a blonde Dolly Parton wig. I would have been like over the moon. But I don't think that's a gift most children want.
No, it's true. And, you know, going back to the violence and stuff these sex workers are exposed to, I think that's another good reason in the argument to just legalize sex work across the nation. You could get rid of all this violence. You could be like, okay, you can't be on drugs and work here. So, you know, you could give women access to the ability to make these large sums of money if they want to go that route. And, you know, and taxed, and you're getting rid of the violence. The pimps are out of there. The drugs are mostly out of there. And just, I don't know.
Safe testing.
It'd be cleaner for everyone, safer.
Public health.
I mean, we could go on for 30 minutes about it. But the number one thing in my mind is getting them off the street.
Yeah, and out of the back seats of cars with these creepy, violent men.
And it's not even just the monstrous serial killers that we talk about from time to time. It is a large chunk of asshole men. Let's be honest. They're just shitty, and they might kill you and cut you up, but they'll slap you or just be cruel to you.
That's why I just feel like Eileen Wuornos, she's a national treasure. Can I say that? That's my hot take.
That's a hot take.
That's my hot take.
But I think a lot of people might share, you know, put her in like a category by herself compared to other serial killers.
Not all heroes wear capes, Dylan.
It's true.
Some of them wear sleeveless flannel Miller Lite t-shirts.
And you got your I'm with Eileen shirt.
I do have a t-shirt.
Is it sleeveless?
No.
It should be.
No. On March 11th of 1992, 27-year-old LaShawna Streeter White was hanging out on Crackhead Corner about 4:15 in the afternoon when a man pulled up in a Ford Granada. He told her he wanted a white woman, and Shauna was African American. So she was like, look, if you give me $30, I can help you find a white woman.
Ooh, smart. She don't even have to touch his wee-wee.
Yeah. So she was like, we just need to drive up the road. So she gets in the car, and as they're driving up King Street, they reach a bit of an intersection, and that's when LaShawna tried to grab the money, like, on the seat and jump out of the car. So she's going to try to rip this guy off. But Bill was too fast. He grabbed her and began hitting her head on the dash, which sounds very painful.
Because I'm sure it's a older car with a hard-ass dash.
Can you imagine somebody, like, whacking your head on a dashboard a couple of times?
I couldn't imagine even
that sounds fucking awful.
In a car nowadays, but I'm thinking this older car probably has sharp edges and shit. Oh, my God.
Like an old Ford Granada.
Oh, heavy damn foam dash.
Yeah. Just sounds like you're going to really have some fucking pain. So he hit her several times, and then Bill drove her out to the old dairy farm road, which was near Moultrie. Now, once they were in the secluded wooded area, he dragged her body out of the car and began beating and kicking her until she was dead. LaShawna was also a crack addict, and she was kind of known, again, like Anita, to rip off customers.
Okay.
So when her boyfriend Curtis Glover noticed that she didn't come home, he knew that she'd probably gotten herself into some trouble.
Having known that she was just as likely to rob someone as do a sex act.
Yeah. So it was not until March 11th that her body was found by a man who happened to be walking down the road and smelled a foul odor, and he kind of went over to investigate because he thought it maybe was like a dead animal, and that's when he finds her body.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So after the murder of LaShawna Streeter White, investigators concluded that these murdered women were the work of a serial killer. The cases were all turned over to VICAP. Investigators began looking for some of the typical red flags among sadistic lust killers: a troubled childhood, a dysfunctional marriage, sex problems. But nothing led them any closer to solving the murders. Investigators took to the streets. They tried to interview sex workers and drug dealers. However, the subculture on King Street was very reticent to speak with cops.
Even at a time when it would benefit them to speak with cops. I guess you just kind of get in a habit of it, you know? Because they look at the cop, oh, that's who harasses me, gets me for, prostitution and solicitation. And just kind of bugs me. I'm not going to talk to that cop. But it'd be in their own self-interest to talk to the cops.
Yeah, so it was like a struggle to get many of these sex workers to open up, to share any information. Investigators did manage to find out that Anita Stevens and Connie Terrell had been good friends.
New position at the police department. It's an officer. Could be male, could be female. It doesn't matter. But they frequent these said prostitutes all the time. They build these intimate relationships with these prostitutes. And then when a situation like this arises, they get information very quickly.
You mean like some type of community liaison?
Yeah, but they got to go have sex with the prostitutes all the time. No?
I don't think that's going to work out.
You think the insurance would be too high? Health insurance?
Yeah, I just don't think that's going to work out, Dylan.
Okay.
I think maybe if you just had someone that was out, like, assisting these women, maybe.
Oh, not treating them like shit constantly?
And
making fun of them?
Having sex with them and stuff?
Oh, yeah, a community liaison. Let's go with that position.
You are a special kind of something, let me just say.
I don't even know how you would explain that, describe that job on the for applications anyway.
So anyway, many of these sex workers had known each other because King Street was still kind of a small area, even though there were a lot of sex workers there. So they had this influx of customers from these various backgrounds. So it was really hard for these sex workers to pinpoint just one creep who might be preying on these women.
Because there's just so much business, so many people through there.
Yeah, and there's so many creeps.
I see.
You know, I mean, they have regular customers, but then they have customers who are more infrequent. Some of them might give you a creepy vibe. Some might be violent. I mean, so it was just kind of really hard for them to nail down like a particular list of like, here are the creeps.
Right.
Right?
That makes sense.
So on April 4th of 1993, Donitha Sneed Hale was working on King Street. Bill drove up in a white Jeep Commando pickup truck, and they made a financial arrangement for sex. Now, Bill would later confess that he had sex with Donitha at a trailer that he lived in, and that afterwards, she told him she was HIV positive.
Damn it.
Which sent him into a frenzy. He began beating the woman until she was dead. He then dumped her body in a 3-acre alligator pit near Murray Middle School, but Donitha's remains would never be recovered.
Oh my God, why is there an alligator pit near the middle school? That seems dangerous.
I know, it's like the match and gasoline factory.
Yeah.
In 1995, Bill picked up a woman named Cheryl Lucas in his black Ford Ranger. And I keep mentioning vehicles because he changes vehicles so frequently. And that was the other thing. Law enforcement had a really hard time, like, pinpointing a suspect and also, like, a vehicle because he changes cars so often.
That makes sense. Instead of this brown-headed guy in this LTD, it's a brown-headed guy in 4 or 5 different model cars.
Yeah.
And that's going to make it a lot more generic.
Well, every time somebody says, well, she got in a car with a white guy, it was a Ford, it was a truck, it was this, it was that. So then officers can't set up a sting and try to find like this one car or anything like that.
Yeah, that would be crucial first evidence to move forward with trying to catch this guy. Yeah, that makes sense.
So he beat Cheryl with a crowbar and then threw her body in a marsh east of St. Augustine. On October 20th of 1995, 47-year-old Diana Richardson was last seen on Chapin Street in St. Augustine. So Diana was from California, and she had a long history of drug addiction and prostitution arrests. Just before her murder, Diana was gang raped by 2 men, Michael Motes and Brian Madaski, both of which were given life sentences for the rape, armed robbery, and attempted murder of Diane.
Well, as well they should be. They should get the death penalty.
Like, it sounds like it was a really horrific and brutal attack.
Yeah, let's be honest. They don't typically, I mean, if you want to do something cruel and horrible, do it to a woman, you're going to get one of the lighter sentences you can get out there, right? Because they always seem to let these assholes off when it comes to rape. They get out over and over and keep raping women. So it must have been very, very brutal and very rough.
Oh, it was like a horrific. Like, the details of this crime, like, gave me chills. It was terrible. But unfortunately, this assault didn't keep Diana off the streets for very long. When she encountered Bill, he offered her $30, and during oral sex, Diana bit Bill's penis, he claims, which sent him into a fury. He began beating her until she was unconscious. Then he dumped her body in the same alligator pit near Murray Middle School, and like Donitha, Diana's body would never be recovered.
Man.
So after Richardson's murder, Bill moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and was living in an RV park in the Otene area of Asheville. Neighbors described Bill as friendly and helpful. A man named Dale Chambers ran this type of brothel out of his home.
Wow.
Where he would like rent out rooms and sex workers would bring men there and they would like pay him for the room.
Dude, they had that place.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, they had that place in Clyde. They were advertising, I think it was on Facebook, that they had goats and chickens for sale and shit. And like upstairs, they were making it happen. Remember that?
I remember that.
Wow.
Our listeners have no idea what you're talking about, but yeah.
It was our local brothel / farm animal sales.
Yeah. So goats and chickens.
That was the code, I guess.
The code, okay.
Yeah.
So this guy Dale said that Bill was, in his 60s by 1996, but that he frequented this brothel like 3 to 4 times a week paying for sex. William Lindsey was reportedly free with his money. He would give girls hundreds of dollars in tips. On and off during his time in Asheville, he would allow some of these sex workers and their children to come stay with him if they needed a place to crash.
So here he's pulling that old Jekyll and Hyde again, It's in his, for whatever reason, he wants to be nice to people, and he does it. He does it in a convincing manner, which I think is interesting that he can be that monstrous, hateful, and brutal, and horrible, and then flip over and be the friendly guy everybody likes.
Well, it was on December 26th of 1996 that the body of a known sex worker named Lucy Raymer was found in Asheville. She was found on Azalea Road, which has been a common dumping ground for bodies over the years. And we actually featured some of the other murders on our Unsolved Asheville episode, like in the very beginning of the podcast.
Just having know that road, you can enter 2 different ways. It loops around to a whole nother kind of part of the county. And it goes directly out into kind of the countryside, away from what you'd consider town or the main drag.
It's a creepy road.
So it makes sense. And I'm sure back then, even more so, there's probably less houses than are there now. And it's probably just basically fields and woods.
It feels like a lot of fields and woods now.
Yeah, that's true. And that would be a perfect, hate to use that term, but that'd be a perfect dumping ground. You don't even have to go back the same way, that you came to get in there.
Well, because you can zip in and out of like that area and be downtown in just a matter of a couple minutes.
Yep.
Like it's kind of a central location to some of the more busier parts of Asheville.
Yeah, and there's multiple ways out of that area.
Yeah. So a cab driver was a witness, and he had come forward and said that he dropped Raymer off at Bill's RV at this, RV park in Otene, like multiple times, and that she'd been seen staying there on occasion, and that he had dropped her there just before she was murdered. So 32-year-old Raymer had died from a blunt force trauma, some sort of blow to the head during a violent attack. It was then that Buncombe County investigators began looking at William Darrell Lindsey. An Asheville sex worker named Chanel Barnes had a violent experience with Lindsey earlier. After negotiating sex for money, the pair were driving on Broadway in downtown Asheville when he began hitting her with a baseball bat about the head and face, nearly killing her. He then apologized to the woman, and Barnes filed a police report and had to seek medical attention.
Damn.
But that was her story with police, was how odd it was, because she was like, he attacked me and just about kills me, and then immediately is like, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to do that.
Like seeming sincere, it sounds like. Wow, she's lucky to be alive.
Yeah, totally. So they already had his name for this attack.
Oh, and once the taxi driver pointed him back towards him, they're really liking him now for this.
So once arrested, investigators began interviewing various sex workers and discussing, Bill with some people around town, and 2 traits kind of became clear. Bill was a sexual sadist who enjoyed brutalizing women, but he was also a very lonely man who needed companionship. His impotency was reported by his first wife and several sex workers, but then others said even into his 60s, he was frequenting sex workers all the time.
Wow, Maybe, I don't know. It seems like if I was impotent or had a significant ED, I wouldn't be wanting to go to sex workers. I don't know.
Yeah, so apparently sometimes he would have this issue and then other times he didn't have any issues.
And also, I guess you must point out that people don't always go to sex workers for sex, right? Sometimes it's for conversation or literal companionship.
Well, and with this idea that Bill was this very lonely man, he would often allow these sex workers, and they found even when he was living in Florida, it was the same thing. He would allow sex workers to stay with him for periods of time. He would give them money. He would help out with their kids. And then they often were drug addicts and would end up robbing him, like steal him blind. But he was just like so lonely that he kind of knew that that's where it would end up, but yet he went along with it anyway, just to like have someone around.
For, a few days a week or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's like this Jekyll and Hyde type of thing.
I'm not going to be sympathetic to this man, but that's interesting that, he did do that and had those two sides to him. And it seemed like it wasn't a put on. It seemed sincere. The one's horrible and mean and scary, but when he's being nice to people, he seems like it's being genuine, which I do find interesting.
So when Bill began being questioned in the Raymar case, that's kind of when the lid blew off of things. So Bill admitted to killing probably 20 to 25 prostitutes.
Wow.
He told investigators, and this is a quote, "You've got to understand that there's a good Bill and there's a bad Bill. Good Bill is a decent person who does the right thing, and bad Bill is someone society needs to be afraid of."
Wow, so he knew the same way people got, his split personality. It almost seems like split personality disorder. What is it? God, I didn't say that right.
Like dissociative?
Yeah. Yeah, that, because it's so real. Both sides are so real and genuine.
Well, after being charged with killing Raymer in North Carolina, authorities were able to connect William Lindsey to the murders in Florida dating back to 1983. So this is where it's kind of interesting that they tied these murders together. So there was a retired Florida police officer who was living in Marshall, North Carolina, that sent a newspaper clipping about the Raymer murder to his friend, Sheriff Perry, in St. Johns County. So from there, Sheriff Perry was able to conclude that 7 women were murdered by Lindsey, a bulk of unsolved cases that his department had been working over the years.
All blunt force trauma, strangled, ligature, shot, dumped
beatings,
in these certain types of areas. Yeah, nice. Bill did seem consistent with what he did to these poor women. So it would make it easier to kind of see a pattern or make connections like that.
Well, when he was finally extradited to Florida, he took investigators around to the various locations where he'd left the bodies. So 5 of 7 victims were found. Lindsey met with detectives from North Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, and Virginia and was questioned in various murders that they believed he had been involved in. But they were only actually able to charge him with those 7 murders. And one in North Carolina.
That's a lot.
Now, the work between the Buncombe County and St. Johns County Sheriff's Office ensured that Lindsey would be tried for 6 murders. However, in July of 1999, Lindsey pled, he pled his way out of the death penalty and was only given 30 years in prison.
Whoa. No. For 6 murders?
7.
7 murders. 30 years in prison.
Yeah.
And not even life without parole.
No.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, they gave him 30 years.
This is a miscarriage of justice.
So he died on April 17th, 2001 in prison after only having served like 2 years of his 30-year sentence.
And he was already an old man,
He was an old man.
Well, that's all the more reason. I mean, that's still, though it would seem likely he would die in jail, that's still a slap in the face to the victims' families, I think.
Now, Bill was a suspect in some other murder cases, which I happened to dig up, and I thought I would share with you guys, and maybe you can decide what you think about it. So in 1987, there was an abduction and unsolved murder of a woman named Pamela Murray from Asheville, North Carolina. And we discussed her case extensively on our Unsolved Asheville episode. She was 23 years old when she was kidnapped and shot. Her body was dumped on Azalea Road near Otine, where Bill often resided. Lucy Raymer's body was also found in that same location some years later. So Bill claimed to cops that he had kidnapped a woman around 1987 from the Asheville Mall and killed her.
Wow.
But they were not able to tie him to Pamela Murray's murder, but they think he is like their top suspect.
Well, I take it she went missing from the Asheville Mall and was
Yeah.
found dead in the same dumping ground.
Like he described to a T Pamela Murray's case.
Well, yeah. There you go.
Also in 1987, 17-year-old Beverly Sherman was shot and dumped in the woods. She was a known sex worker in Asheville, and she had been picked up by a white man in downtown Asheville just before turning up dead. Like the last time anyone saw her, she was getting into a car, I believe it was like a station wagon with a white man. Valerie Holloway was found shot in a wooded area off Kenilworth Road in Asheville in April of 1991. Then, in Richmond, Virginia, Lindsey was a suspect in the murders of 27-year-old Pamela Faye Hayden in 1993 and 27-year-old Wendy Radcliffe, who was killed in 1996.
Wow.
Another woman named Cynthia Tolbert, 41 years old, was a sex worker found dead in a cemetery on Sweeten Creek Road in Asheville in 1992. She had only lived in Asheville for about 7 years, and she had had previous arrests for prostitution.
So these are all cases unsolved.
Yes.
That they feel most likely could be connected to Bill.
That he was a suspect in these cases.
So I take it they figured out he was in the area at the time. This is when he lived in the area.
Fits his MO.
So I think they're onto something.
But he didn't like confess to any of these crimes.
Right.
But yet he says he killed between 20 and 25 prostitutes.
Yeah, and he was convicted for 7 deaths.
Now, what's really interesting to me is Bill's first murder allegedly took place in 1983, and he was already he was in his 40s. And as we know, most male serial killers start killing in their 20s and early 30s.
Yeah.
So was Bill someone who didn't start killing until he was in his 40s? Or had he been killing for like a decade or so before that?
That's a good question.
I think that's very, just a very strange detail.
Why would you wait that long and then start?
Yeah. And then the fact that he was killing well into his 60s.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy because, it's probably a little disarming to the prostitutes. There's this old man, it's like, okay, let's go give Grandpa some fun. And then it turns out he's a fucking monster.
Well, and it's strange to me, too, that so he killed someone in 83, and then they convicted him of another murder in like 88, and then into the 90s. But it seems like so early on, he had these long cooling off periods. But then in like 1995 and 96, kind of back-to-back killed multiple women.
Yeah, or maybe they just don't have the whole picture, and he didn't tell them the whole truth. And he did have victims earlier in his life and
had been killing women all along.
Yeah.
These are just the ones that they happen to find or connect him to.
Possibly. It could have been something else along the lines of a Samuel Little.
Because he was nomadic and he did live in these multiple states.
Yeah, and he was doing this for decades.
Well, investigators do believe he killed more women and that he did murder in Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida.
Anywhere he lived.
They have just not been able to tie him to other cases.
Wow. Damn. Bill.
But I think Bill is an interesting character. I think if he did start killing in his 40s, that's very strange. It's odd. That's not normally how serial killers work. A lot of people have looked at his marriage to his wife, Willa Jean, and they feel like she was kind of a catalyst for his bad behavior.
Well, yeah.
That after having been married to her, that's when he kind of became violent. And that perhaps if they hadn't had their tumultuous relationship, he may not have turned into this violent killer.
Well, I mean,
But who knows?
Yeah, but I mean, I could explain why he changed. He already had all the way he grew up and these different traits. So it's kind of just brimming under the surface. And at some point it boiled over and he realized how much, I think a lot of times that's what happens, you know. They either think about doing it or it just happens when they have this really horrible temper or something. And then they realize how much they enjoy killing. And then it's on.
Now, what I found very interesting when he was arrested and charged with Lucy Raymer's murder, which I believe was in early 1997, he was in Asheville, and one of Bill's main concerns was that he didn't want his mother to hear that he had been arrested and charged with murder.
Yeah, well, you don't get to make requests now, Bill. You're a murderer.
Well, but here he is, an adult, grown man in his 60s, and he was concerned about what his mother would think.
That's crazy.
It just goes to show what kind of control she still seemingly had over him.
He was still concerned about what she thought.
Yeah. But, you know, people were shocked when they learned this about Bill because from the outside, he was a family man, seemingly normal, went to church.
Now, do you think these killers do this kind of hide in plain sight out of necessity and it's just a mask? It's not real. They throughout their life learn the social cues and how people should act, if you will? Or do you think, like quite possibly in Bill's case, that there was literally two sides to him? You know, Ted Bundy said the same thing. Of course, he was, you know, maybe like to try to grandioso or whatever his image or something, but he called it the beast, right?
Right.
And like there was this whole other part to him. So
well,
maybe,
BTK.
Yeah?
I mean, he's, by all accounts, was a loving husband and father.
Yeah, and it's like they're not just a normal person. They're like over the top, friendly, nice. I never would imagine they would do this. You know, it's like they're super extra nice and normal, if you will.
Well, it just makes you wonder if your parent or your spouse is the serial killer. You know, they're a sociopath or psychopath. Like, did they ever genuinely have emotion for me? But I do think some of these killers, they do genuinely have love for their children.
Yeah, I don't think they're
I don't think they're completely incapable.
No.
I mean, I feel like a lot of times they try to portray these murderers as like they're just so unfeeling and they learn to fake it, but they really don't have any kind of emotions or feelings. But I don't think that's true because I think many of them do actually love and care about their kids.
So they're basically, all these killers are Dexter when he's having all these inner monologues with himself, how he truly just doesn't feel and has to fake and has to go off of other people's reactions for what he should do. I don't think we fully understand the serial killer mind. You know, there's maybe some cliches about it that aren't true.
But then in the end, Dexter cared about his son.
Well, that's true.
So, I mean, I think that they are capable of having feelings and emotions. I just think that it's still kind of early in the psychology of it, and and you're right, we don't fully understand their minds.
And they're not all exactly the same, right?
Right.
Not fighting for serial killer rights or recognition, but I do find it fascinating that's even more fascinating to me than if they're a psycho sociopath.
There's these like two sides
that
to
they
them.
and they truly are faking it and they just do this to get by. If they truly are having these genuine emotions and feelings for people, that I find way more fascinating than the other scenario. Wow, did we just did we just create like a whole new department at the college?
No.
I think we might have.
I think you did, Dylan.
Damn, I got to start writing this shit down.
Okay, Professor.
Professor Dill.
Well, I was going to say, I would think of you as being like maybe Gilligan, but now I see you're the professor.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that. Trying to pull me back down to earth.
The skipper.
I hate it when you do that. See, now you're making me, instead of me being connected to a possible new department in the college, and possibly running it, I think I should be running it because I came up with the invention of the entire department. Now you're equating me to this goofy, just, you know, ne'er-do-well guy Gilligan on the
Okay,
island.
so I'm going to shut you down. Okay, can you take your little coconut microphone that you've made over there and your little coconut headphones.
Oh, my
Take
God.
those off. It's time to say goodbye.
I think I have sleep deprivation buzz.
I think you have something going on. I don't know quite what it is.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mountain Murders. If you would like more, don't cut me off, Dylan. I'm cutting you off. Don't cut me off.
Oh.
They can sign up at patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast to access bonus content. We have a lot of extra episodes over there, ad-free content, and of course our Discord chat, which is a lot of fun. If you want to drop us a line or you have a case suggestion, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com is a great way to get in touch with us. Now you can say goodbye, Dylan.
You didn't let me say none of that.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.